The movie opens with the credits rolling in the background, showing a shabby bar. A Nobel Prize winner, Professor Wallace, is interviewed, and his words are, "What was it? A meteorite? A visit of inhabitants of the cosmic abyss? One way or another, our small country has seen the birth of a miracle, the zone. We immediately sent troops there. They haven't come back. Then we surrounded the zone with police cordons. That was the right thing to do, though I don't know." A stalker is a guide who leads people through the zone, a place outside an unidentified city that resulted from an extraterrestrial invasion, and where the normal laws of physics no longer apply. The state has closed it off from the outside world with barbed wire, and armed police and soldiers closely guard it. Inside the zone, there is the room, which is said to grant one's deepest wish to anybody who enters it. The next scene shows a room where three figures, a man, a woman, and a child, are sleeping together on an iron bed. Next to the bed is a pair of crutches. The man slowly gets up, dresses up, goes to the kitchen sink, and washes himself. The woman, his wife, joins him and asks where he's going. She says he made her a promise and that she believed he would keep it. She criticizes him for returning to his old ways, which will surely land him back in jail, as it did once before. The stalker's wife states that he should think about his family if not himself, and begs him not to go into the zone. The man argues for her to let him go, saying that he must go, and he finally pushes her aside and leaves the room. As he leaves, his wife curses the day she met him, and blames him for having produced such a child. She falls to the ground, weeping. The man, Stalker, goes to the waterfront to meet with a couple, a well-dressed woman and a man, Ryder. The woman is interested in traveling to the zone and asks the man if he is a stalker. But to her surprise, he dismisses the woman and, together with Ryder, walks back to the bar shown in the film's opening, where a third man, Professor, is waiting for them. No sooner do these two men meet than they start arguing with each other. Stalker will guide these two men through the zone. The writer explains that his trip is to recover his lost inspiration, while the professor's motivation is purely scientific curiosity. Subscribe to the channel if you want to visit the zone to grant your wish. Stalker and the two men leave the bar for their dangerous mission into the zone. They drive through a lonely urban landscape of broken down and abandoned buildings and damaged streets. They stop when they see a police patrol passing by and duck down to avoid it carefully. After some time, sneaking behind a train, they enter through open gates, the buffer area of the zone. They hide for a while, following the train again through another checkpoint. As they go, they enter the zone. Having taken shelter in an abandoned building, they regroup, and Stalker sends Ryder ahead to look for a railway flatbed car, which will take them inside the zone itself. The Ryder loses his nerves and turns around immediately, having second thoughts about continuing the trip, so Professor calmly volunteers for the mission. All three men journey silently through the changing landscape on the flatbed car in a single 3.5-minute journey to the zone. As they reach, the film turns from sepia color to full color. There is a striking contrast between the zone's lush green but littered landscape and the previously encountered rundown surroundings. The atmosphere is still, except for the calls of cuckoo birds heard far away. "There we are, home at last," says Stalker, and proceeds to talk about another stalker, his mentor, Porcupine, who led his brother to his death in the zone, visited the room, gained a lot of money, and then hanged himself a week later. Before distancing himself, Stalker hands Professor some white cloth and steel nuts and tells him to tie a piece of thin gauze to each. When Stalker rejoins the group, their journey through the zone begins. Stalker tells his clients that they must do exactly as he says to survive the invisible dangers that lie ahead. Stalker then tests for traps by throwing the metal nuts tied to strips of cloth ahead of them. The writer is skeptical of any real danger, while the professor follows Stalker's advice. It is not the best time to doubt the leader of the group, Ryder. As the trio travel, they discuss their reasons for wanting to visit the room. The writer expresses concern about losing his inspiration, while the professor hopes to win a Nobel Prize. Rules that apply outside the zone are no longer valid inside it. For example, the shortest path between 2 points is no longer a straight line, but a complicated path. As they soon arrive closer to the room, the writer rebels against this rule and proceeds straight on toward it, but he stops when he hears a voice warning him. "Stop, don't move." The writer returns to Stalker and Professor, who swear they have not spoken a word. Professor, suggesting that the writer scared himself, starts another argument, interrupted by Stalker, who again talks about the danger in the zone, full of deadly traps, and what kind of person is allowed to enter the room. Professor now gets nervous and refuses to go on. but Stalker encourages him, and the group continues. Having forgotten his knapsack, Professor wants to return to get it. Stalker tells him it is impossible because it is too dangerous. Stalker and Ryder continue their journey, wading knee-deep toward a waterfall. Arriving at the cascade, Stalker notices that Professor is missing. Since it is impossible to retrace one's path in the zone, they proceed, and as they pass through an archway in a tiled wall, they meet a peaceful Professor having a drink by a fire, with his knapsack nearby, just where he had previously left it. The Stalker recognizes this as a trap. During another argument, the Professor and Ryder throw insults at each other, and suddenly, a mysterious dog appears. Ryder and Stalker discuss the power of art. A quick cut shows the group arriving at the meat grinder, a dark tunnel dimly lit through a hole in the ceiling, and a floor covered with puddles. The Ryder is selected in a draw to go first, while the rest of the group follows at a safe distance. When Ryder reaches a door, he pulls out a pistol, but Stalker convinces him to throw it away. They continue through the door, walking chest-deep in filthy water, up a stairway, and into a room filled with moguls of sand. The Ryder, who had moved in the wrong direction, stands next to a deep well where he had just dropped a large stone. He delivers a long monologue about his life's emptiness and how his work is meaningless. In the following scene, the trio finds itself in one of the small rooms connecting a pool full of waste, in which there is a telephone. The telephone begins to ring. The Ryder answers it and speaks into the phone, stating, "This is not the clinic," before hanging up. The surprised Professor decides to use the phone to call a colleague so he can brag that they almost arrived at the zone. A heated discussion begins about each of the men's fundamental objectives for wanting to reach the room. Stalker leads the two men through an opening in the wall and stops at the entrance of a brightly lighted room. Choked with emotions, he tells his companions that they are about to experience the greatest moment in their lives. In the room, they can fulfill their most passionate wish. Ryder refuses to go in first as he does not want to humiliate himself by falling on the ground. Professor reveals his true intention as he takes out a handheld nuclear bomb he had carried all along in his knapsack, stating he does not want the power of the room to be used by the wrong people for the wrong reasons. The Stalker fights with the Professor, trying to take the bomb away. The Ryder tries to stop them several times, pulling Stalker away from the Professor. The Ryder makes all sorts of accusations against Stalker, questioning his motives and honesty. A tearful Stalker responds that he is a failure and that all the people he brings to the room are failures, but he still helps them. Eventually, Professor takes his bomb apart and throws the pieces in the water. In retrospect to Stalker's story about his old mentor, Porcupine, the Ryder realizes Porcupine sent his brother to his death in the meat grinder, because before someone wants to reach the room, they have to sacrifice a body in the meat grinder. Porcupine had a plan to wish for Stalker's brother to be resurrected, but the room instead fulfilled Porcupine's secret desire for wealth rather than returning Stalker's brother from death. This made the guilt-ridden Porcupine to commit suicide. The Ryder tells them that no one in the world can know their true desires, so using the room for selfish reasons is impossible. The last scene shows the three men sitting on the floor outside the room, with Ryder, his arm over Stalker's shoulder, and Professor leaning against their backs. Ultimately, none of them decided to enter the room and left. I didn't see that one coming. In the next scene, in the black and sepia film, we are back in the bar with the trio standing around the table, almost as at the film's opening. Outside are Stalker's wife and his daughter, Monkey. A black dog that followed the three men through the zone is now in the bar with them. When the wife enters the bar and asks where he got it, Stalker says it became attached to him and he could not leave it behind. Stalker leaves the bar with his family and the dog, leaving Professor and Ryder behind. As Stalker is carrying his daughter on his shoulders, we see that his daughter, Monkey, is disabled and cannot walk by herself. They walk along a river with the power plant in the background, producing smoke. Once at home, Stalker is very depressed, and his wife calms him down and takes him to their bed, saying he should get some rest. Shortly after, when Stalker's wife tells him she would like to visit the room, he doubts the zone, claiming that he fears his wife's dreams will not be fulfilled. As Stalker sleeps, his wife reflects on their relationship in a monologue delivered directly to the audience. She declares she knew life with him would be hard, that he would be unreliable, and that their children could be deformed. But she concludes by saying that despite all the challenges she's endured over the years, she does not regret marrying Stalker. She says that their marriage was blessed because if there had been no suffering, there could have been no happiness either. Then, with a tiny movement in a single frame, the lasting image, the daughter moves 3 glasses on the table with her mind. Tarkovsky, who made this movie, has hidden the answer to the question in the most unnoticeable of places. The child. Her hint of evolution and humanity lurching into another plane tells us that there is hope for the future, but only if we have faith in our ability to reach it. And with this, the movie ends. Thank you for watching and subscribe to the channel.